The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched vast and imposing, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 worlds. Ambassador Mino stood at the central podium, his hands gripping the edges as he looked up at the tier upon tier of alien delegates. He had given this same speech in various forms 17 times over the past 5 years. Each time, the result was the same. Honored members of the council, Minho began, his voice steady despite the anger burning in his chest. I come before you once again to present evidence of the Velcrin Empire's violations of treaty agreements. 3 more human colonies in the Outer Rim have been attacked. 2,000 civilians are dead. Our requests for peacekeeping intervention have been ignored for 8 months. The holographic displays around the chamber lit up with images. Burning settlements. Destroyed homes. The faces of the dead. Minho watched the alien delegates, searching for any sign of sympathy. Most looked bored. Some whispered to each other. A few openly sneered. Tajan, the Quarian representative, rose from his seat. His blue skin seemed to glow with satisfaction as he spoke. Ambassador Minho, the Council has reviewed your complaints numerous times. The Velcrin expansion is a matter of territorial dispute, not unprovoked aggression. Furthermore, human colonies continue to expand at an alarming rate. Perhaps if your species showed more restraint, these conflicts could be avoided. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Minho felt his jaw tighten. He had expected this, but it still stung. For 200 years, humanity had served the Council faithfully. Human engineers had built the quantum communication network that connected the galaxy. Human doctors had developed cures for diseases that plagued dozens of species. Human peacekeepers had died on 100 worlds to maintain order and protect the weak. And for what? To be blamed when others attacked them. Aboard the flagship Dauntless, orbiting 3 light-years away, Admiral Hygiene watched the proceedings through a secure channel. Her bridge crew sat in tense silence. They had all lost friends or family in the Velcrin attacks. They had all volunteered to defend those colonies, only to be ordered to stand down by the Council. Admiral, her communications officer said quietly, "The vote is starting." Hygiene watched as the Council delegates activated their voting crystals. The question was simple. Should the Council authorize peacekeeping forces to protect human colonies from Velcrin aggression? Green for yes. Red for no. The chamber filled with red light. The vote wasn't even close. 347 against. 22 in favor. 15 abstentions. But the Council wasn't finished. Tajian stood again, a smile on his alien features. The Council has a second matter to address. Due to humanity's aggressive expansion and repeated conflicts with neighboring species, we propose trade sanctions. All human vessels will be restricted from using primary trade routes. All human goods will be subject to increased tariffs. This will remain in effect until humanity demonstrates a commitment to peaceful coexistence. Minho couldn't believe what he was hearing. Peaceful coexistence? We're the ones being attacked. We're the ones dying. Your emotional outbursts prove our point, Ambassador, Taejun replied smoothly. Humanity is too young, too volatile for positions of authority in galactic affairs. This council has existed for 10,000 years. We understand the complexities of interstellar relations in ways your species cannot grasp. The vote on sanctions passed even more easily than the first. Minho stood at the podium, surrounded by the red glow of rejection, and felt something break inside him. Not his spirit, but his faith. His belief that the council could be reasoned with, that justice could prevail through patient diplomacy. He tapped his communicator. Connect me to Earth. Priority Alpha. Within moments, President Chiho's face appeared on his personal screen. The president's expression was grave. He had been watching everything. Minho, he said simply, come home. Sir, If I could have more time. No more time. No more speeches. No more begging for scraps of dignity from species who see us as children to be scolded. Jiho's voice was firm, but not angry. It was the voice of a man who had made a difficult decision and found peace with it. Gather our people. All of them. Every human diplomat, engineer, doctor, and peacekeeper in council space. We're leaving. Minho felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, fear, excitement. Mr. President, are you certain? If we withdraw from the council, then we withdraw. Let them manage their own affairs. Let them fix their own problems. Let them learn what they had and threw away. Jiho paused. I'm making the announcement in 1 hour. Be ready. The president's face vanished. Minho looked up at the assembled council one last time. Taejun was conferring with other delegates, probably congratulating himself on putting the humans in their place. The thought made Minho smile. They had no idea what was coming. 1 hour later, every screen in the council chamber activated simultaneously. Every communication device. Every public display on every council station and world. President Jiho appeared, and his words would be remembered for generations. People of Earth and members of the Galactic Council, he began. Today marks the end of an era. For 2 centuries, humanity has served this council with honor. We have bled for it. We have died for it. We have given our best minds, our bravest souls, our greatest achievements to the cause of galactic unity and peace. In the council chamber, delegates were frantically trying to cut the transmission. Nothing worked. Human engineers had built the system. They knew how to make it unstoppable. But service without respect is slavery, Jiho continued. Protection without gratitude is exploitation. We came to the stars seeking fellowship among equals. Instead, we found ourselves servants to masters who despise us. No more. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. All treaties are void. All obligations are ended. Every human being in council space is ordered to return home within 30 days. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates shouted in anger, others in fear. A few sat in stunned silence, only now beginning to understand the implications. To those species who showed us kindness, Jiho said, his voice cutting through the noise, you will always have Earth's friendship. To those who exploited our good nature, you are on your own. To those who celebrated our suffering, remember this moment. Remember that you had the best allies in the galaxy, and you threw us away. Now face the universe you created without us. Good luck. You're going to need it. The transmission ended. In the council chamber, Minho gathered his papers and walked toward the exit. Delegates called after him, demanding explanations, making threats, even offering hasty compromises. He ignored them all. At the grand doors, he paused and looked back one final time. You wanted us gone, he said quietly. Now you have your wish. The doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder. 6 months had passed since the last human ship left council space. On Earth, Sujin sat in her small apartment, drinking tea and watching the news feeds from across the galaxy. She had spent 15 years maintaining the Galactic Council's quantum communication network, the vast system that allowed instant communication across thousands of light years. The Council had taken it for granted, never bothering to learn how it actually worked. Now, the system was falling apart. Her personal terminal chimed with another message. She glanced at the sender. Council Technical Services Priority Emergency. It was the 43rd message this week. She deleted it without reading and returned to her tea. The news was far more interesting that the Velcrin Empire had invaded the Thelian Confederacy 3 months ago. Without human peacekeepers to intervene, the war had spread like fire through dry grass. 12 systems were now battlegrounds. Billions of civilians were fleeing their homes. The council had called for negotiations 17 times. The Velkrin ignored every call. Su Jin remembered the Thelian delegate who had voted for sanctions against humanity. She wondered if he regretted that vote now, watching his worlds burn. Probably not. These ancient species were too proud to admit their mistakes. Her terminal chimed again. Council Technical Services. She deleted it. Across the galaxy, on what used to be the Meridian trade route, Captain Deho commanded a human cargo ship making its way back to Earth. He had served as a liaison officer to the Centauri merchants for 8 years. He had considered many of them friends. Or so he thought until the vote. His communication system lit up with an incoming call. Centauri origin. He recognized the signature. Merchant Captain Velas, who he had saved from pirates 5 years ago. Daho hesitated, then accepted the call. Velas appeared on screen, his 4 eyes wide with desperation. Daho, thank the stars. You must help us. The trade routes are overrun with pirates. They've taken 12 ships in the past month. My convoy is next, I know it. Please, your military could... No, Deho said simply. What? But we're friends. I would help you if... Would you? Deho interrupted. I seem to remember the Centauri delegation voting for sanctions against my people. I remember your government celebrating when humans were restricted from the trade routes. How did that representative phrase it? Finally, the upstart humans will learn their place. Velas's skin paled. That wasn't me. That was politics. I never wanted, but you didn't speak up, did you? None of you did. You were happy to let use take the blame, to let us be punished for defending ourselves. Now you want our help? Daiho shook his head. The pirates are your problem now. Good luck. He terminated the connection. His crew watched him in silence. They had all lost friends or family in the Velkrin attacks. They had all heard the council's indifferent responses. None of them objected to his decision. On the medical station called Healing Hand, Dr. Yunho packed the last of his research into secure containers. He had spent 9 years working on a cure for cascading cellular decay, a terrible disease that affected 6 different species. His team had been close, so close to a breakthrough. Now he was leaving, and the research was coming with him. His assistant, a Draxi scientist named Corvith, stood in the doorway, wringing her hands. Dr. Yuno, please reconsider. The Phase 3 trials were showing remarkable results. If you leave now, thousands will die. Yunho sealed the container and turned to face her. Do you remember the Red Plague? Corvith blinked, confused by the question. I've heard of it. A human disease, yes? 27 million humans died, Yunho said quietly. 27 million. We begged the council for help. We asked for research funding, for medical supplies, for anything. Do you know what the council said? Corvith remained silent. They said human health concerns were not a priority for council resources. They said we should focus on building immunity naturally. 27 million people died, while the council did nothing. Yunho lifted the container. Now you want me to finish the research that will save your people. Why should I? Because you're a doctor, Corvith whispered. Because you save lives. I save lives that matter to my people, Yunho replied. The council made it very clear that human lives don't matter to them. So why should your lives matter to us? He walked past her toward the shuttle bay. Find another scientist. I'm going home. In the Grand Council chamber, an emergency session was underway. The chaos of the past months had reached a critical point. The Velkrin-Thelian War had pulled in 3 more species. The pirate attacks on the Meridian route had collapsed interstellar trade. Medical stations were reporting disease outbreaks they couldn't contain. The quantum communication network was failing. Leaving entire sectors isolated. Taejun stood at the central podium, trying to maintain order as delegates shouted over each other. He had drafted a proposal for sanctions against humanity for abandonment of duty, but the proposal had died in committee. Too many species were starting to understand the problem. An old Centauri delegate rose, his voice cutting through the noise. Perhaps we should consider an apology. An invitation for humanity to return with better terms. Never. Taejun shouted. We cannot show weakness to these children. The council has stood for 10,000 years without them. We will stand 10,000 more. Will we? The Thelian ambassador stood, his robes scorched from a recent attack on his homeworld. My people are dying. The peacekeepers who could save them are human. The negotiators who could end this war are human. The medical researchers who could treat our wounded are human. What exactly has the council done in the 6 months since they left? Silence fell over the chamber. The truth was painful and obvious. The council had done nothing but argue. It had held votes that meant nothing. It had passed resolutions that no one followed. Without humans to enforce its will, without humans to solve its problems, without humans to hold it together, the Great Galactic Council was revealed as nothing more than a debate club for proud, ancient species who cared only for themselves. Taejun felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. He looked around at the chaos, at the fear in the eyes of delegates whose worlds were burning, and wondered if perhaps he had made a terrible mistake. On Earth, President Jiho received daily reports on the galactic situation. His advisors urged him to offer help, to extend an olive branch, to show that humanity was better than the council. He refused every suggestion. Let them struggle, he said. Let them face the consequences of their choices. Let them learn that respect is earned through action, not demanded through age. When they're ready to treat us as equals, they know where to find us. Until then, we focus on our own people. Earth's colonies flourished in the months after withdrawal. Free from council restrictions, human scientists made breakthrough after breakthrough. Human industries expanded. Human culture thrived. The galaxy burned. But humanity was building something new, something better. Something that didn't require the approval of species who had never valued them. Watched another news report showing the communication network failing across 3 more sectors. Her terminal chimed. Council Technical Services. Priority emergency. Critical system failure. Please respond immediately. She picked up her tea, took a slow sip, and deleted the message. The galaxy was learning a painful lesson. Take someone for granted, and eventually they will leave. Use someone without appreciation, and eventually they will refuse. Treat your best allies as servants, and eventually you will face your enemies alone. The council had wanted humanity gone. Now they were discovering what that truly meant. 1 year had passed since humanity walked away from the galaxy. The consequences were now impossible to ignore. Commander Sumin sat in the intelligence center deep beneath Earth's surface, studying data from automated monitoring stations positioned at the edge of human space. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Velkran-Thelian War had expanded. It was no longer a war between 2 species. 5 major powers were now involved, and dozens of minor species had been dragged into the fighting. 1/4 of the galaxy was burning. Entire civilizations that had existed for thousands of years were being wiped out in weeks. But that wasn't the worst of it. Commander, her analyst said, highlighting a section of the star map. The Korath hive mind is expanding again. They've taken 14 systems in the past 3 months. No one's stopping them. Sumin leaned forward, studying the data. The Korath were a species of insectoid creatures with a collective consciousness. They were aggressive, relentless, and had only been kept in check by a careful balance of power maintained by the Council. When humanity was part of that council, they had organized the defensive perimeter that held the Korath at bay. Now that perimeter was gone. The species that could have united against the Korath were too busy fighting each other. Old grudges that humanity had mediated were now exploding into violence. Territorial disputes that human diplomats had resolved were reigniting. The galaxy was tearing itself apart, and the Korath were feeding on the chaos. "Estimate," Sumin said quietly. "If current expansion rates continue, when will the Korath reach Council core worlds?" The analyst ran the numbers. 18 months, Commander. 2 years at most. Sumin closed her eyes. 18 months until billions more died. All because the Council had been too proud to treat humans with basic respect. Across the galaxy, navigation beacon number 742 Alpha flickered and died. It had been built by humans 60 years ago, designed to last for centuries with proper maintenance. But there had been no maintenance since the humans left. One by one, the beacons that made safe interstellar travel possible were failing. Ships got lost. Some found their way eventually. Others vanished into the void, never to be seen again. The medical protocols that humans had established were breaking down too. Dr. Jiwan, now working at a hospital on Mars, watched news reports of plagues sweeping through worlds that had rejected human offers to improve their emergency medical systems. The diseases were preventable. The deaths were unnecessary. But the Council species had been too arrogant to accept help from upstart humans. Now they were paying the price in blood. Earth's government offered humanitarian aid to civilian populations. Food, medicine, basic supplies went out to worlds in desperate need. But nothing went to the Council itself. No technical support. No military assistance. No diplomatic intervention. The message was clear. Humanity would help the innocent, but not the system that had rejected them. Captain Bora commanded the exploration vessel Discovery, mapping uncharted regions beyond human space. She loved her job. Out here, away from politics and councils and ancient species who thought they knew everything, she could focus on the wonder of discovery. Her sensors detected a distress signal. A ship, badly damaged, drifting in neutral space. The signature identified it as Centauri, but the hull damage suggested it had been attacked by pirates. "Captain," her first officer said, "should we investigate?" Bora hesitated. The standing order was clear. No assistance to Council species. They had made their choice. Let them live with it. But these were civilians. People who had nothing to do with politics or votes or sanctions. "Change course," she said. "Bring us alongside." The rescue took 3 hours. 15 survivors were pulled from the wreckage, most of them injured. Bora's medical team worked quickly, stabilizing the wounded. Among the survivors was someone she recognized from the news reports. Taejun, the Quarian who had led the vote against humanity. He was badly injured, barely conscious when they brought him to the medical bay. Bora stood over him, watching her doctor work. This was the person who had smiled when humans were sanctioned, who had called them too young, too volatile, too stupid to understand galactic politics. Why? Taejun whispered, his eyes opening. Why save us? After everything... Bora pulled up a chair and sat down. Because we're human. We don't let people die to make a point. We don't celebrate when others suffer. We don't turn away from those in need just because they wronged us. But we... Double quotes. Taejun's voice faded. You were wrong, Bora said simply. You judged us by your own standards. You thought we were like you, that we would abandon our principles the moment it was convenient. But that's the difference between humans and the Council. We actually believe in the values we preach. Taejun recovered slowly over the next 2 weeks. During that time, he witnessed something that would change him forever. He saw how the Discovery crew operated, how they helped each other, how they solved problems through cooperation rather than hierarchy, how they made decisions based on what was right rather than what was profitable or powerful. He saw human colonists on a small world the Discovery visited. They were building something beautiful, a society where everyone had value regardless of age or species. There were aliens there too, refugees from the war, welcomed and integrated into the community. "You're not just surviving," Taejin said to Bora one evening. "You're thriving. Without the Council, you're better." "We were always capable of this," Bora replied. "The Council just held us back, made us waste our energy on politics instead of progress, made us fight for respect instead of earning it through achievement. We're not better without the Council. We're just finally free to be ourselves." She brought up a news feed showing the galactic situation. The war spreading, the infrastructure failing, the Korith advancing. "That's what the Council is without us. Chaos, because you never built anything real. You just maintained power structures based on age and pride. When someone challenged those structures by actually being good at things, you couldn't handle it." Taejin watched the reports in silence. Everything Bora said was true. The Council had existed for 10,000 years, but what had it actually accomplished? It had maintained peace through human efforts. It had advanced through human innovation. It had provided humanitarian relief through human compassion. Take humans away, and it all fell apart in months. "What do we do?" he asked quietly. "How do we fix this?" "That's not my problem," Bora said. "I'm not a Council delegate anymore. None of us are. We're just humans trying to live our lives in peace. If the Council wants to fix itself, that's the Council's responsibility. But the war, the Korith, billions will die. Billions of humans died from the Red Plague while the Council did nothing. Thousands of humans died in Velcrin attacks while the Council blamed us. We learned to solve our own problems. Now you have to learn the same lesson." Taejin realized then the full magnitude of what had been lost. Not just human military power or technical expertise, but something more fundamental. Humans had provided hope. The belief that problems could be solved, that justice was possible, that the strong had a duty to protect the weak. Without that belief, the Council had nothing to hold it together except fear and self-interest. And fear and self-interest were tearing the galaxy apart. When the Discovery reached the nearest neutral port, Taejin disembarked with the other survivors. He turned back to see Bora watching from the airlock. "Thank you," he said, "for saving my life, for showing me the truth." "You're welcome," Bora replied. "Now go home. Tell your people what you saw. Maybe some of them will listen. Maybe some of them will understand. But probably not. Pride is a hard thing to swallow." The airlock closed. The Discovery departed for human space. Taejin stood alone, watching it go, knowing he had witnessed the future. A future where humans built their own destiny, free from the chains of a Council that had never valued them, and a future where that Council would fade into history. A cautionary tale about what happens when the powerful forget that respect cannot be demanded, only earned. 3 years after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Great Galactic Council had fractured into competing factions. The Velcrin Empire controlled vast territories through brutal military force. The Korith hive mind consumed worlds unopposed, their expansion seemingly unstoppable. Pirates had become warlords, carving out their own kingdoms from the chaos. Hundreds of billions suffered in a nightmare that showed no signs of ending. Earth's orbital defense station buzzed with activity as a small fleet approached. They were not Council ships. These vessels belonged to the minor species, the ones who had shown humanity kindness even when it wasn't politically convenient. Species who had abstained from the vote or quietly offered support during the dark times. Ambassador Myray, who had worked closely with these species before the withdrawal, met them in the diplomatic hall. She recognized many faces. The Theron, whose medical teams had helped during the Red Plague. The Valix, who had shared intelligence about Velcrin movements. The Corvin, who had publicly criticized the sanctions. Their leader, a Theron named Solak, stepped forward. His people were small and gentle, their civilization built on art and philosophy rather than military might. They had never threatened anyone. Now their worlds were dying. Ambassador Myray, Solak said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. We come not to ask you to rejoin the Council. That institution is dead, even if it doesn't know it yet. We come to ask for help saving our people. The Korath will reach Theron Prime in 6 weeks. We cannot stop them. The Council cannot stop them. Only humanity can. Myray felt her heart break. She had lived on Theron Prime for 2 years. She had friends there, people who had shown her nothing but warmth and respect. I will present your request to President Chiho, but I cannot promise anything. We've built a good life here. Many humans believe we should focus on our own people. We understand, Solek said quietly. If the answer is no, we will face our end with dignity. But we had to try. We had to hope that humanity was still the species we believed them to be. The delegation left. Myray stood alone in the hall, wrestling with emotions she couldn't name. Finally, she made her way to the government complex where President Jiho maintained his office. The president looked older than he had 3 years ago. The weight of leadership showed in the lines on his face. He listened to Murray's report in silence, then leaned back in his chair. Call an emergency session, he said. The Senate, the Joint Chiefs, all senior advisors. This decision is too important for one person. 2 days later, Earth's leadership gathered in the Great Assembly Hall. Admiral Hygiene presented the military situation. In 3 years of peace, humanity had advanced its capabilities dramatically. Free from Council restrictions on weapons development, human engineers had created defensive and offensive technologies that would make any intervention swift and decisive. We could break the Korath advance in weeks, Hygiene said, displaying tactical analyses. Possibly days. Our new ships are faster, more powerful, and more efficient than anything else in the galaxy. The question isn't whether we can help. It's whether we should. Seojin, who had taken over as Earth's chief diplomat after Minho retired, argued for selective intervention. We don't return to the Council. We don't submit to their authority. But we can form bilateral alliances with species who have shown us respect. Build something new based on genuine cooperation. Senator Dongha stood, his voice passionate. While we debate philosophy, people are dying. Millions of them. How can we call ourselves better than the Council if we let innocents suffer to prove a point? Yes, the Council wronged us. Yes, we were justified in leaving. But letting the Theron die when we could save them? That makes us just as bad as the species who abandoned us during the Red Plague. Philosopher Nari rose to respond. Her family had died in that plague while the Council watched. Her voice was calm but cold. The Theron showed us kindness. I don't dispute that. But where were they when we needed help? They abstained from the vote. Abstained. They didn't stand with us. They didn't speak up. They just remained silent and let it happen. Now they want our protection? So we punish them for not being heroes? Dongha challenged. Most people aren't heroes. Most people stay silent when things are hard. That's human nature, too. Should we condemn an entire species to death because they weren't brave enough to oppose the Council? The debate raged for hours. It was broadcast across all human colonies, watched by billions. People called in with their opinions. Families argued at dinner tables. Friends found themselves on opposite sides. Some argued that humanity owed the galaxy nothing, that 3 years of peace and prosperity proved they were better off alone, that helping others would just drag them back into the same cycles of exploitation. Others argued that turning away from those in need would make humanity the very thing they hated about the Council, that their values meant nothing if they only applied them when it was convenient. That President Shiho listened to it all. Finally, he called for a vote, not just from the government, but from all of humanity. Every citizen would have a say in this decision. It was too important, too fundamental to who they were as a species, to be decided by leaders alone. The voting took 3 days. It was close, painfully close. In the end, the decision came down to a margin of just 2%. Humanity voted to intervene. But on their terms, Chi-Ho addressed the human worlds and the waiting delegations. We will help those who cannot help themselves. We will defend THE innocent. We will stand against tyranny and chaos. But we will not rejoin the Council. That institution is dead. We will instead build something new, the Confederation of Free Worlds, an alliance based on mutual respect, equal representation, and binding obligations that apply to everyone, not just the weak. He looked directly at the camera, knowing the Council would be watching. To any species who wishes to join, the requirements are simple. Recognize that all sapient beings have equal value, regardless of age or power. Commit to defending each other against aggression. Submit to independent arbitration for disputes. And accept actual consequences for treaty violations. If you can agree to these terms, we will stand with you. If not, you're on your own. Within hours, 43 species had requested to join. Within days, over 100. Not all were minor powers. Some were former council members who had watched their civilization crumble and realized the old ways were dead. Admiral Hai-Jin prepared her fleet. They had trained for this, hoped they would never need to do it, but prepared nonetheless. 200 ships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering. Crews who believed in something worth fighting for. The news spread across the galaxy. Humanity was returning. Not as servants, not as peacekeepers for a corrupt institution, but as protectors of a new order built on the principles the Council had only pretended to uphold. On Theron Prime, Solek received the message and wept with relief. His people would live. The Korath would face an enemy they had never imagined in the old Council chambers. Now mostly empty, the remaining delegates realized what was happening. The galaxy was reorganizing around humanity, not because humans had demanded it, but because humans had proven they deserved it. By walking away, by building something better, by showing that their values were real and not just words. Humanity had become what the Council had always claimed to be, but never was. A beacon of hope in a dark galaxy. Teijin, who had spent 3 years trying to reform the Council from within, finally admitted defeat. The ancient institution could not change. It would die slowly, still arguing about protocol and precedent while the galaxy moved on without it. He submitted his resignation and requested permission to meet with human diplomats. It was time to join the Confederation. Human fleet emerged from faster than light. Travel at the edge of the Theron system. Admiral Hai-Jin stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable, watching the tactical displays update in real time. The Korath had already taken the outer planets. Their hive ships were advancing toward Theron Prime, a dark swarm of biological horror that had consumed a dozen civilizations. All ships report ready. Admiral, her tactical officer said. Hai-Jin nodded. Send them a message. Standard terms. Withdraw or be destroyed. The message went out. The Korath response came quickly, a wordless shriek of hunger and contempt. They had never encountered an enemy they couldn't overwhelm with numbers. They didn't believe such an enemy existed. Their mistake, Hygiene said quietly. All ships engage. What followed would be studied in military academies for generations. The human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship perfectly positioned, each action coordinated with impossible precision. The weapons humanity had developed in isolation were terrifying in their efficiency. Hive ships that had survived countless battles simply vanished in bursts of light. The Korath tried their usual tactics. Swarm the enemy with overwhelming numbers. Accept massive casualties to exhaust their weapons. It had always worked before. It didn't work against humans. 4 hours after the battle began, it was over. The Korath fleet was destroyed. Not driven off. Not damaged. Destroyed completely. The surviving Korath withdrew from Theran space in confusion and fear, encountering for the first time in their existence a species that could not be overwhelmed. On Theran Prime, billions watched the sky as human ships took up defensive positions. They had been preparing for death. Instead, they witnessed salvation. Ambassador Mino, who had come out of retirement for this moment, stood in what would become the first Confederation embassy. Solak was there, along with representatives from the 43 founding species. "This is not the Galactic Council," Mino said clearly. "We are not recreating the system that failed. The Confederation has one simple principle. We are all equal. Age does not grant privilege. Power does not grant immunity from consequences. We all have one vote. We all follow the same rules. We all protect each other." He placed a data pad on the table. "Here are our founding principles. Read them carefully. If you can truly commit to these values, sign. If not, walk away now with no hard feelings." One by one, they signed. The Confederation of Free Worlds was born. The news spread quickly. More species applied to join. Some were accepted. Others were rejected because they couldn't meet the standards or wouldn't give up their privileges. The Confederation was not desperate for members. It was building something that would last, not rushing to claim territory. Engineer Sujin led the technical reconstruction of the Allied territories. She trained teams from a dozen species, teaching them not just how to maintain the systems, but why they worked. The old council had kept species dependent. The Confederation taught independence. Dr. Yuno established medical stations that served all member species equally. Rich or poor, old or young, everyone received the same quality of care. He trained doctors from across the Confederation in the techniques humanity had developed. The knowledge was freely shared. Commander Sumin organized the Confederation Defense Force, a multilateral military built on human tactical doctrines, but incorporating the strengths of every member species. It was not a human force that others served under. It was a truly integrated military where every species contributed equally. The old Galactic Council watched all of this from their nearly empty chambers. Some delegates proposed reforms, tried to copy what the Confederation was doing. But the reforms never passed. The powerful species that remained couldn't imagine giving up their privileges, even to save themselves. Tajan, who had joined the Confederation as an independent observer, watched the Council's death spiral with sadness. He had spent his whole life in that institution. He had believed in it, defended it, fought for it. Now he saw it for what it truly was, a monument to pride that had long ago stopped serving any real purpose. The Velkrin Empire, emboldened by the Council's weakness, made their final gamble. They would strike at Earth itself, destroy the heart of the Confederation before it could grow strong enough to stop them. Their fleet was massive, gathered from every corner of their empire. It was the largest military force assembled in galactic history, They arrived at Earth's system expecting a fierce battle. They found something else entirely. Earth was surrounded by a defensive network that made the Velkrin weapons useless. Every missile, every energy beam, every kinetic projectile was absorbed or deflected. The Velkrin fleet might as well have been throwing rocks at a mountain. Admiral Hygiene's fleet emerged from Earth's moon base, surrounding the Velkrin from all sides. She opened a channel to their commander. "You came here to destroy us," she said calmly. "Instead, you've handed us your entire fleet. I'm offering you two choices. Join the Confederation as equals, submit to trial for your war crimes, and help rebuild what you destroyed. Or refuse and spend the rest of your lives in prison while your empire collapses without you. You have 5 minutes to decide." The Velkrin commander was silent for a long moment. His empire was built on strength. He respected strength. And he had just witnessed strength beyond anything he had imagined. "What guarantee do we have?" he asked. "That we won't be enslaved? That we won't be punished beyond the trials?" "My word," Hygiene said simply. "And the Confederation Charter, which applies to everyone equally. You'll face justice for your crimes. But once that debt is paid, you'll be full members with all rights and responsibilities. Your people will have a voice. Your culture will be preserved. You'll be treated the same as everyone else." "The same as everyone else," the commander repeated. He had spent his life in a hierarchy where the strong dominated the weak. The concept of equality was alien to him. "But perhaps that was the point. We surrender," he said. "Unconditionally." The Velkrin fleet was captured intact. Not a single shot was fired. Not a single life was lost. The empire that had caused so much suffering was absorbed into the Confederation. Its aggressive expansion ended not through destruction, but through demonstration that a better way existed. 5 years after humanity's return, former President Jiho walked through a memorial garden on Earth. Each flower represented a human life lost during the years of council indifference. Thousands of flowers, each one a person who had deserved better. Ambassador Myray found him there. She was now Secretary General of the Confederation, elected by unanimous vote of all member species. "It's strange," Jiho said quietly. "We had to abandon the galaxy to save it." "We didn't abandon it," Myray replied. "We abandoned a broken system. The galaxy was always worth saving. The council wasn't." They walked together through the garden, past flowers of every color. Above them, ships from 100 different species moved through Earth's orbit. Trade vessels, diplomatic shuttles, cultural exchange programs. The Confederation was thriving. "Some do," Myray said. "Tejon certainly does. He's become one of our strongest advocates. Others still don't. They're still clinging to the old council, still arguing about procedure while their civilization dies. But that's their choice. And if they ask to join the Confederation? Same terms as everyone else," Myray said firmly. "Equal representation, binding obligations, actual consequences for violations. We don't make exceptions, not even for species that are thousands of years old. Especially not for them. The whole point was to build something better." Across the galaxy, in what used to be the Grand Council Chamber on Sanctuary Prime, the lights were dark. The last delegates had left months ago. The chamber stood empty, a monument to an era that had ended. But on 100 worlds, new chambers were being built. Confederation halls where every species had an equal voice. Where decisions were made based on justice rather than power. Where the strong protected the weak, not out of obligation, but because it was right. The universe had learned its lesson. Those who give freely are strong. Those who are exploited owe nothing. And those who mistake kindness for weakness will eventually face a terrible reckoning. Humanity had come to the stars seeking fellowship. They had found exploitation. So they had walked away, built something better, and proven that their values were not just words, but a foundation for civilization itself. Now the galaxy was rebuilding in their image, not because humanity demanded it, but because humanity had shown it was possible. The message echoed through history, carried in the Confederation Charter that every member species signed. We will help those who need it. We will stand with those who respect us. We will never again bow to those who mistake our compassion for weakness. The old order was dead. A new era had begun. And at its heart was a simple truth that had taken the galaxy far too long to learn. Respect cannot be demanded. It can only be earned. And humanity had earned it by walking away when they were not valued, and returning only when they could do so on their own terms. The universe descended into chaos when humans left. It was reborn when they returned. And the difference between the two proved everything humanity had always known, that true strength comes not from age or power, but from principles lived rather than merely preached.